Tim Tam intro take one.
Could you start by saying, "What's up, YouTube"?
What's up, YouTube? I'm Claire Saffitz. We're in my home kitchen, and today I'm making Tim Tams, the Australian delight. So today's episode of Claire Recreates, we have put a pin in Kinder Bueno. I would say the circumstances were challenging, the subject was challenging, and today I need a win. I have zero history with Tim Tams. The history began about 4 days ago when these arrived in the mail because I couldn't find them at my local stores. I love trying stuff from around the world, and I just know that they are a favorite store-bought treat invented and made in Australia. Tim Tams are to Australia as Oreos are to the US, I think. I just know that they are beloved. Australia's favorite biscuits. There is no substitute is also what it says. But mine's not gonna be a substitute. It's just gonna be its own thing. Original cookies. Biscuits, cookies, the packaging says both. Created in 1964, Tim Tam is Australia's most loved and most iconic chocolatey biscuit. Indulge in irresistible layers of Tim Tam with a mouth-watering combination of smooth chocolatey coating, crunchy cookie, and luscious velvety center. What more could you wish for? Do Australians refer, like in the US, these would be a cookie. In England, they would be biscuits. So what do they call it in Australia?
Biscuit.
Someone let us know in the comments. I really like the sleeve that they come in. They're very pleasingly packaged. I'm gonna pull one out. They look like something I wanna eat. I love sandwich cookies. The color is a little bit beige for it being chocolate, I'll say that. And it's actually kind of starting to melt in my hands already, which means do I have to temper the chocolate? Maybe not. Doesn't have much smell. And the smell that I'm getting is not really a chocolate smell, but let's just taste. Very pleasing texture, very crisp cookie component. Similar to Oreo in the way that like the filling mixes with the sort of dry, crunchy cookie in a good way. Plus this has the added coating from outside. So texturally, great eating experience. The flavor, not so much. Has a hard to place flavor that reads as like being a little bit malted, but I almost get more of that flavor than I get of chocolate. And like, look at how melty it's getting. That meltiness over for my fingers probably actually helps a lot in terms of eating because it means it's gonna melt really fast when you're chewing it and it's in your mouth. And that contributes to the experience of it. But to me, Tim Tams falls into the same lane as like every other thing I've ever done on this show. The texture is great, the flavor needs improvement, but like I'm eating the whole thing. The cookie to me is just like a very basic kind of wafer style, like butter cookie that you bake all the way through. So it's dry and crisp all the way through. And it has a kind of crumb to it, like a lightness. So it's like, it's leavened. There's some baking powder, baking soda. The eating experience of when you bite down, you don't crush the filling and it doesn't squeeze out between the two cookies. So I think I want to try to achieve that. One thing I want to note is the like textured chocolate waviness on the surface. It really starts to melt immediately in the hand. Is it part of the point of the thing that it melts quickly? So it cuts in half really cleanly. The biscuit is sort of a medium pale brown. The filling is kind of the same color as the coating, which is also kind of pale. I'm gonna try to really nail the proportions and the dimensions, but mine is gonna be a lot darker than this. I can already tell you. It's just how it's gonna look. Is the filling the same as the chocolate coating? I don't know. The texture is different in the illustration, but I don't know. Let me do some measurements of the whole thing. I do like the size. The size is kind of like a pleasant, like 3-bite thing. So it's about 6 centimeters by 3. As far as the height of everything all together, this is 1.3 centimeters. And then I'll do a quick sort of cross section. Each layer is kind of 3 to 4 millimeters. I think that's all the measurements I need. So here is the exposed filling and here's a whole one. There is a color difference and also just a textural difference. I do think that the filling is its own thing. The cookie component, really so thin. It's much thinner than I thought I was gonna have to make them. And this is after it's baked. So this is after, there's maybe some puffing from the leavening. This is really key for me to see because I'm gonna have to roll whatever cookie dough I make extremely thin. Really, really thin. Not very sweet. It really has kind of almost a graham cracker texture. This is what makes these good. I think that this is one case where reading the ingredients is not really gonna help me, but I'm gonna take a look. Let's see what they are. Ingredients: sugar, wheat flour, vegetable oils, parentheses, palm, shea nut and or sal, milk, cocoa butter, chocolate liqueur, golden syrup, parentheses, sugar, comma, water. And then contains 2% or less of ammonium bicarbonate, butter oil, our friend butter oil, which is basically ghee, caramel color, cornstarch, soy lecithin, polyglycerol, polyricinolate, natural and artificial flavors, cocoa powder, salt, baking soda, red 40, yellow 6, blue 1, yellow 5, coconut eggs. Very interesting. Cocoa powder is far at the end of the list of the 2% or less ingredients. Well, the chocolate liquor is one of the main ingredients, but then we get the last ingredients being coconut and eggs. Very interesting. Primarily what we have here though is a treat made of sugar, flour, oils, and some amount of chocolate. Sal oil is a type of vegetable oil extracted from the seeds of the sal tree. I wonder if that's something, which is native to the Indian subcontinent. Sal oil is sometimes used as a substitute for cocoa butter in the production of chocolate or similar products, especially in regions where it's more economically available. I don't think the point here is to use cocoa butter. The point here is to use chocolate, which contains cocoa butter and is going to make the flavor more chocolatey, which I think is what we all want here. Tim Tam. Tim, I would love to know where the name comes from. Step 1, make cookies / biscuits. 2, make filling. 3 is gonna be assemble, and 4 is gonna be enrobe. By the way, I saved it. We'll come back. Kinder Bueno, we haven't forgotten. Definitely not forgotten. I pulled some ingredients last night, just knowing that I was gonna be kind of making like a chocolate biscuit type cookie, and I'm gonna go with a pretty traditional, like, you know, wafer style cookie: butter, flour, some cocoa powder, sugar. Should I add a little malted milk powder?
Sure.
I do feel like it has a little bit of a malted flavor, although there's no indication of it on the ingredients. And what I might be picking up on is like some off flavor from some of like the oils or something, or almost like in the way that cocoa butter sometimes has like a flavor that you could confuse for malt, but
Make the cookie you want.
yeah, okay, make the cookie I want. All right, so this is malted milk powder. I have an egg, which I had to put in here because Archie loves to knock eggs off the counter. I have both baking soda and powder out, but I'm gonna actually only use powder, and that's because I'm using a Dutch processed cocoa powder. And natural cocoa powder, so cocoa powder just sort of made from the cacao plant, is naturally acidic, but when it's Dutch processed, the acidity is neutralized, so I don't have the presence of an acid to react against baking soda, so I'm going to use powder, which has its own reagent, basically. So I'm going to weigh 50 grams or a half a cup. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons malted milk powder. This is a teaspoon of kosher salt. Then I have 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. This is going to go in. And then I'm going to do a half a teaspoon of baking powder. This is a 1/4 teaspoon measure, so I'll do 2 of these. So I'm mixing all my dry ingredients. Just want to whisk this together. This bowl is a little bit on the small side. You can see the color of this is already like darker than the biscuit itself, and as soon as cocoa powder hits any kind of moisture, the shade is going to deepen a lot. I have a stick of butter. This is at room temp, and I think I'm going to mix this biscuit dough by hand. I don't really feel like getting my mixer out. So 3/4 of a cup of sugar is 150 grams. I'm going to lightly cream together the butter and the sugar by hand. I also got my oven preheating, 350, kind of, you know, the very standard baking temp. The base recipe, wafer cookie, it's kind of it's really adapted from this chocolate wafer from a famous cookbook author whose specialty is chocolate, named Alice Medrich. It's a well-known recipe, and so this is kind of modified from a modified version of that. I mean, I think the only variable here that I'm unsure of is like the amount of leavening, like how much baking powder to add. And I think really what this is going to be about is getting it really thin, because when it bakes, it's going to puff up from the baking powder. So I'm just kind of creaming this together till it's a little bit light and fluffy. So now I'm going to add my egg. And I'm also going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. So now dry ingredients go in. I'm using this Dutch processed cocoa powder, which has kind of a red tint. So this is gonna make like a very richly colored dough, very different than the Tim Tam. And generally speaking, with a cookie dough like this, the stiffer the dough, meaning the higher the proportion of dry ingredients, the less it's gonna spread, the more it'll hold its shape. But again, I can always reshape the cookies after baking if I need to. What I'm really mostly concerned about is the proper thickness, and I can always figure out the dimensions after they're baked. It's a little crumbly. I'm gonna work this a little bit with my hand inside the bowl just to bring it together, to make sure it's evenly mixed. So here is my cookie dough. I'm gonna use biscuit and cookie interchangeably. I mean, it looked really dry when I was adding the dry ingredients, but it's actually, it's a relatively soft, but it's easy, it's not sticky, it's easy to handle. I am going to roll this out between 2 pieces of parchment paper. I'm gonna start with just a half of the dough because I need to roll it extremely thin. I'm gonna set the other half aside. I don't really wanna add much extra flour because I don't wanna dry it out. So I'm just gonna kind of get it going. And I have a feeling that for the thickness that I'm going for, which is basically under 2 millimeters, or about 2 millimeters, I might cover most of this piece of parchment. I do want to just cover that dough while it's sitting there. I mean, one thing that occurred to me is I could even try to use a pasta roller to get this dough to a really, really even thickness and put it with both sheets of parchment paper through the pasta roller. I can get it that thin. The question is, can I get it that even? So one important thing when you're rolling out between 2 pieces of parchment paper, especially if there's any kind of moisture in the dough, you'll end up getting wrinkles in the parchment. So it's important to lift up and replace the parchment as you work to prevent big wrinkles in the dough. Another thing that I could do is to try to find some kind of guides, like these skewers. These are 3 millimeter in diameter. So you know what? I'm gonna cut this. There we go. What was I gonna get out of here? Okay. So this now I'm learning this was too large of a piece of dough to start because I have to get it so thin. I trimmed the dough to make a smaller slab. I put my skewers as my guardrails basically to even out the thickness. Now I'm gonna move them down and roll the bottom half. And you know what? I don't even really need to roll. I can kind of drag. What I want to do is I want to quickly chill this, and I'll cut a couple cookies from the chilled slab, or maybe, yeah, it should be chilled first. And then we'll do a little bake test. So I'm just going to actually pop this in the freezer for 2 minutes, and then I'll cut out a couple rectangles and get them in the oven. I was like, whose phone is going off? That would be mine. That's my timer. That was 8 minutes. And about 30 seconds ago, I started to smell the cookies. So I think they're done. Let's take a look. They really didn't spread much. They look really good. I can tell from touching them that they're done. They spread very minimally. I would really just go in and clean up the sides. I want to show you how I'm going to make the shape very, very even. You just take a little rasp grater. The edge just got a little bit wavy. It just needs 1 or 2 passes, and I'm kind of rounding off the corners a little. I want to break it in half and see the texture. Looks pretty good. I feel like it looks a lot like the kind of inside crumb of the biscuits. I think it might be a little on the tall side. Oh yeah, we're at a 1/2 centimeter, 5 millimeters. So I think pasta roller it is. I have the 2 rollers set to the widest setting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this slab here in half and try to transfer half of it to this other piece of parchment. That did not work. So the idea here is that I'm kind of making packets of dough inside the parchment. And I'm gonna run the packet through the roller. So here's one packet. Let's just try this, see if it works. Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. Oh, well. A little bit squeeze out the top. So all right, now let's uncover this and see. Looks good. I mean, the top part got a little messed up, but I just cut that off and reuse the scraps. But that's a pretty good looking, very, very even slab of dough. I am going to repeat that with the second slab. While these are chilling, I'll roll more and hopefully get a bunch of these baked. Tim Tam biscuit, take 8. So 10 minutes just went by. I can smell the biscuit. It looks good. They're done. I can tell because they're a little darker around the edge, and I don't want to bake them anymore at 350 because I don't want them to overbake, like get burned. There's a little bit of bubbling that happens from just air underneath the cookie, but that's okay. Those can be on the bottom. I'm going to see if I really need to actually dehydrate them. These are thinner than before. They're very crisp. I don't even know if I need to dehydrate these. You tell me. What do you think?
Huh.
Very light and crisp, right?
You don't need to do that.
All right. What I think I want to do now is match them up. Start to kind of assemble my little sandwiches. Even though I measured very carefully, they're not all the same size. So like, you know, this one's a little thinner than that one. So I want to start to just kind of match them up generally in size. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim them together. I'm not going to belabor this process too much. Well, broke one. This is just about getting the two cookies to be the same size and to be straight. So here I have my sandwich cookie, same size. I feel so good about this. The cookies are great, great texture. That's what I was going for. I have somehow ended up with a perfect 20. And now I'm going to go on to the filling, which I've been thinking about this whole time, and I have a plan. I'm going to make a whipped ganache. A kind of classic ganache or traditional ganache. Really, it means equal parts cream and chocolate melted together. And this is a mixture that's used to make truffles, for example. All right, 200 grams. So I'm gonna do 200 grams of cream. I could heat this up on the stove, but it's already in a microwave safe measuring cup, so I'm just gonna put it in the microwave. I want it to be kind of at like a simmer. I'm gonna watch it. It might take a minute, but it might take less, but it might take more. So my hot cream is going to go over the chocolate. It's going to melt the chocolate. I'm going to add to this a little pinch of salt onto my stand mixer. And I'm going to let this sit until the chocolate is melted, and then I'm going to start to mix it with the whisk attachment. Really what's best is to mix it to melt the chocolate and incorporate everything until smooth, and then let it sit until room temperature or close to room temperature to whip it. But if I were to put the whisk on now, it speeds up that process anyway. So I'm just going to move right into that. After 5 minutes or more, I think the chocolate is melted. I'm going to turn on my mixer. I'm going to make guidelines on my parchment, just to help me make sure I'm piping straight. And once I see it kind of looks like buttercream, like frosting consistency, it's ready to go. Okay. It looks really good, beautiful texture, firm peak buttercream texture, but it has a limited working time because if it gets too cool, it's going to start to sort of set. So I want to quickly get it into my pastry bag and start to pipe it in rows. It's really good. I mean, it's good quality milk chocolate and cream, so how bad could it be? Plus a little salt. Milk chocolate, I feel like, I don't know why, but sometimes I think it's like, oh, if you're like a real chocolate lover, you don't like milk chocolate. I love milk chocolate. What's not to like? So I'm going to carefully lift up the sides of my piping bag. So I pressed out all the air and pushed the whole mixture down into the bottom of the bag. And now I'm going to start piping. And I'm going to follow these rows. We'll see about the thickness. I can always squish it a little bit to flatten the filling. I'll probably do a few more just because I have more in the bag. I'm also very aware that I'm not actually piping them terribly straight, but it's actually kind of hard to do. I think that this is going to set hard. I'm more accustomed to working with ganache with dark chocolate, which is a firmer set than milk, but I'm fairly confident that if I stick this in the fridge, it'll harden and I'll be able to cut and fill. But I'm going to leave the rest in the bag just in case it doesn't happen, and I actually just need to pipe it onto the cookies. See, it's a little bit narrow. You know, I have a new plan. New plan. I'm gonna do a full slab of this and then cut it. I wish now that I didn't have these groove marks in my parchment. I'm just gonna make one big slab and then cut it like I cut the cookies. The piping was helpful though in getting things quickly to like a thin, even layer. I'm gonna stick this in the fridge. So one of my concerns is that, especially if the filling is hardened, that I might get some little air bubbles between the cookie and the filling, especially if the filling is like set and hard. So one thought I had is to basically take some of the filling and like scrape it, like spackle in some of the holes with the filling to make a flat surface, but it won't take me long, and I'm just gonna do it while I wait for the rest of the filling to set. The question is, will it be firm enough for me to like cut it and place the filling on? So it's set, like it's firm, it's not coming off on my finger. I'm sort of eyeballing this just as a test. Didn't totally work. Maybe the best bet is just to like apply it with my offset. And then to just kind of eyeball that 2mm thickness. Maybe this didn't quite come together in the way I thought it would, and where I could like punch out rectangles and a filling and put them on the cookies, but it's set enough that I can just kind of spread it. I'm gonna start assembling, get them all put together, and then throw them in the fridge to try to prevent some softening while I melt some chocolate. And you know what? I don't think I'm gonna temper this chocolate. I just don't. Why? I just want them to be able to break cleanly when you bite into them, and for the filling not to get squished out. I'm gonna get these in the fridge, kind of clean up a little, and then get some chocolate melting for enrobing. And while I'm over at the fridge, I'll cross off steps 2 and 3. Make filling and assemble. These feel really good. After resting in the fridge, they feel nice and sturdy with that filling. So here's my melted chocolate. I'm gonna turn the heat down. I'm gonna leave it over the water so that it just keeps the mixture warm and fluid. I got my fork, I got my spoon. So I just threw the whole cookie in there to get it coated. Now grabbing with the fork and like intense, Because it is such a thin layer, intense tapping of the excess. I want to be especially conscious of excess because the cookies themselves are cold, and so it is going to make that chocolate actually set faster. And then actually I like this cake tester because it helps me lift it off of the fork without getting a fingerprint in it. All right, these are gonna go into the fridge to fully set. I'm just gonna do a quick cleanup and then we get to taste them and do a little side by side. I mean, it's spring, so it's lighter later, but I've never finished this early. Feels amazing. One concern is maybe the chocolate's a little thick, and then my second concern is maybe that the filling is a little bit on the soft side. All right, so here they are. I have some favorites already. This one I really like. Mine's a little longer and not quite as tall. I would say like a good third shorter than theirs. But I think that that's good because I think it's just gonna make it taste more delicate. Obviously, because I used a high quality dark chocolate, color is like very different, but I knew that from the beginning. What I don't like is kind of how slightly grayish their coating is. And so mine obviously is just much darker and richer because real chocolate. So these are cold, still from the fridge, but my finger, I'm still kind of getting like immediate fingerprints in it, which is the same as how the original is too. The filling is a little soft compared to the cookie, but the flavor is incredible. These are saltiness, perfect. The chocolate coating, not too thick at all. That I'm super happy with. Texture of the cookie, great. Has that kind of like dissolving in your mouth, super crisp, very light. I think the filling could be a little bit firmer. So if I ever make these again, I would add a higher proportion of the milk chocolate, and that will help to make it a little firmer. It doesn't quite give me that like clean break and bite, but the flavor is phenomenal. I went a little too thin on the cookie. Maybe I didn't need that pasta roller, but it was kind of fun. With a higher proportion of milk chocolate and a little bit more filling, I think they would be perfect. Chocolate melting on my hands. I like the bitterness from the dark chocolate on the outside, and like something, frankly, in a lot of ways very different from the Tim Tam, because this one is not really about like a chocolatey flavor. So this is my interpretation of a Tim Tam, but visually very happy with it. I think it looks great. And they are delicious. I think one of the most successful things about the homemade Tim Tam is I made a lot of them, which is not generally part of the story on Claire Recreates. So good for me. Overall, I feel really good about it. I like how it went, that it was like, I kept making progress. I didn't feel like I was spinning my wheels on any one particular step, not that I'm making a reference to a previous episode or anything. If I had to do it again, I would pretty much do it the same way with just small tweaks, and that's always a good feeling. I'm very happy to be introduced to more global snack foods. So if you have ideas, if you don't live in the US and where you're from, there's like a special treat, let us know. And as always, thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.